It is the brutal winter of 1315 AD. Northern Europe is gripped by the Great Famine. Endless rain drowns fields, rivers burst their banks, crops rot in the ground. By the time the crisis ends in 1317 to 1322, an estimated 5 to 10% of the population, hundreds of thousands, will have starved or frozen to death. Yet in the villages that endure, one factor separates the living from the corpses: mastery of fire. Subscribe and comment for more ancient videos. Not modern gas heaters or electric blankets, not wood stoves with chimneys and fans, just raw, hard-earned knowledge: how to ignite a flame in soaking wet conditions, how to feed it when wood is scarce, how to keep it alive for days without constant tending, and how to carry live heat across frozen miles when everything is drenched and sub-zero. Medieval peasants routinely kept fires burning for 8 to 12 hours using only 2 logs. They burned animal bones when firewood ran out. They smoldered peat for weeks in windowless huts. They transported glowing embers in clay pots through blizzards and rainstorms. These were not luxuries, they were survival necessities. Now jump to February 2026. Winter storm systems are slamming the US Midwest and Northeast again. Power outages last days or weeks in places like Texas. Remember 2021, Michigan, Ohio, and now increasingly the Dakotas and Montana. Millions lose heat, pipes burst, carbon monoxide deaths rise from desperate generator use. In 2021, Texas alone, 4.5 million homes dark, over 200 dead, grid collapse in 72 hours in the richest nation on Earth. Medieval fire techniques sustained entire communities for centuries through far harsher, less predictable conditions. Modern centralized heating failed spectacularly in days. Why the difference? Because medieval methods were decentralized, fuel-efficient, weather-resistant, and deliberately suppressed. In 1184, English forest laws made gathering deadwood a crime punishable by mutilation or death. The Enclosure Acts, 16th–19th centuries, privatized common lands, stripping peasants of access to woodlands. Knowledge of sustainable fire became subversive. A person who could keep warm without nobility's permission didn't need lords, taxes, or tithes. Survival independence was criminalized because it threatened control. These 7 ancient techniques require no grid, no pipelines, no supply chains. They work when everything modern collapses. That is precisely why they were erased from collective memory. Before we dive in, share your story in the comments. Have you ever lost power in winter and struggled to stay warm? What improvised heat did you use? Your experiences teach more than any textbook. The Rakovalkea, the Finnish log fire that defies physics, also called the slit bonfire or gap fire. Finnish hunters, loggers, and soldiers perfected it over centuries in Arctic conditions. Take 2 large, dry logs, each 6–8 feet long, 8 to 12 inches thick. Lay them parallel on the ground with a 6–8 inch gap between them. Carve a shallow V-shaped channel, about 2 to 3 inches deep, along the inner face of each log to guide airflow and create ember beds. Fill the gap with kindling, dry twigs, birch bark, pine needles, light from the center. What happens next seems impossible to many. The fire burns downward into both logs simultaneously. Physics explanation. Radiant heat reflection creates a feedback loop. Flames in the narrow gap heat both facing surfaces intensely. Each log radiates heat to the opposite log, roasting the interior wood via pyrolysis. Volatile gases escape through the channels and burn in the controlled oxygen-rich gap. The gap acts as a natural combustion chamber. Side air inlets feed oxygen gradually. Hot gases rise vertically, preventing flare-ups. Too narrow means a smoky or incomplete burn. Too wide loses reflection efficiency. 6 to 8 inches is the sweet spot Finnish trial and error discovered long before thermodynamics textbooks. Result: one setup burns steadily, 8 to 12 hours with almost no tending. Minimal smoke, maximum heat directed downward for ground warming, ideal for snow shelters or lean-tos. Modern equivalent. Wood gasification stoves use the same controlled draft principle. Tested in -30°F Finnish winters and replicated by modern bushcrafters, still outperforms traditional teepee fires in wind, wet, or fuel-scarce conditions. 2 burning bones, the fuel most people throw away. Medieval peasants never wasted slaughter byproducts. Bones were premium winter fuel. Fresh long bones with marrow intact contain approximately 25% collagen, 10% water, marrow fat, and 65% mineral hydroxyapatite. The organic fraction burns, while the minerals retain and radiate heat. 2002 study by archaeologist Isabelle Terry-Perisseau, University of Nice. Controlled burns showed bone wood mixes produced longer, steadier heat than wood alone. Higher bone ratio, longer duration. Peak temperatures. Bone fires 800–900 degrees C versus wood 600–700 degrees C. Bone stabilizes output. Less spiking, crashing. Porous, spongy bone ends act like natural slow-release briquettes. Air circulates through structure, organics char slowly, mineral matrix holds heat post-combustion like a natural storage heater. Practical method. Stockpile bones from hunting, butchering. Pig-killing month was November. Mix 15–30% bone with wood, dung to start. Bones won't ignite alone, need 300 degrees to char. Once going, add more bone for sustained baseline heat. Etymology proof. English bonfire derives from bone fire, not bon feu, good fire. 14th century records show communal bone collections for village fires. In fuel-short winters, bones turned waste into life-saving thermal mass. Peat, turf, powered entire peat bog regions, Ireland, Scotland, Finland, Netherlands, northern Russia, Baltic states. Peat forms in waterlogged bogs. Dead sphagnum moss, sedges, grasses partially decompose anaerobically. Accumulates Shaban minatiter year, so a 3-meter deposit is 3,000 years old. Dried peat energy density seasoned hardwood, how 7,000 BTU LB, but burns completely differently. Smoldering, flameless combustion at 500–700 degrees C. Spread rate, 1/10 some hour, glacial compared to flaming wood. Once lit, persists 12 to 48 hours, or days, weeks underground, without tending. Survives rain, snow, wind. Perfect for 30-degree nights when restarting is deadly. Harvesting. Cut blocks in summer, dry on site, stacked, rick formation for airflow, store under cover. 4 men could cut enough in one day for a family's winter. Scale. Norwich Cathedral burned 400,000 blocks year in 14th–15th centuries. Dutch Golden Age shipyards used peat for thermal processes, bending planks, tar melting, freeing imported wood for hulls, economic multiplier. Why superior in cold? No need to stoke constantly. Smolder keeps hut above freezing overnight. Modern tests confirm properly dried peat can burn months underground. Modern survival lore claims pine cones as overnight fuel. Reality check. They burn hot fast due to resin. Great accelerant, poor long burn mass. True medieval use, supreme kindling in wet cold conditions. Dry pine cones, open scales for a huge surface area, plus airflow. Resin, natural accelerant. One match lights them vigorously in seconds, burning several minutes at high heat. Application, damp tinder. Light 1 to 2 pine cones first. Place burning cone inside twig teepee. Intense, sustained flame dries, ignites surrounding fuel in 5 minutes, even in rain, snow. Multiple cones create fire blast to jumpstart larger logs. In wind, hold cone as portable starter. Pine-rich areas, Scandinavia, Alps, North America, made this abundant and reliable. Medieval travelers, herders, messengers carried glowing embers in insulated containers to avoid restarting in hostile weather. Common designs: clay pots, unglazed, porous, lined with moss and ash, birch bark rolls or punkwood bundles, animal horn sections filled with char cloth and embers, slow match cords of twisted tow or rope soaked in saltpeter solution. Method: bank fire to bright coals, bury in dry ash or moss, then seal it in a carrier. Embers smolder for 6 to 24 hours. Blow gently to revive at destination. Finnish and Sami fire kits included fungus, foams fomentarius, tinder that holds ember for days. This let people cross wilderness without friction fire in rain, critical when hypothermia kills in minutes. Coppicing, perpetual firewood without killing trees. In England, 13th century, there was only about 7% woodland cover, a population boom, and a firewood crisis. The solution was coppicing. Cut a tree to a near-ground stool. Dormant buds sprout vigorous poles. Harvest every 7 to 15 years. The stool resets to a juvenile state, living over 1,000 years. Examples include Bradfield Woods in Suffolk, where ash stools have been producing since pre-Norman times, over 1,000 years of continuous harvest. Yield is 3 to 5 cubic meters per hectare per year, versus an unmanaged forest which yields far less. No replanting is needed. Management involved dividing the woodland into coops or sections on rotation. A woodward, an official, enforced cuts, ensured quality, and protected regrowth from grazing. Common species include hazel, ash, oak, alder, and willow, all excellent for regrowth. In North America, species like maple, birch, oak, and cherry are used. Henry VIII's 1544 statute protected coppice for national energy security. Modern revival, legal on private land. Start with 2 to 3 acre woodland, cut dormant season, leave 4 to 6 strong shoots, harvest poles in 8 to 12 years. Final layer, never let fire die. Technique: at night, rake glowing embers into pile. Cover thickly with ash, dry soil, or turf. Smothers flames but keeps coals alive, 200, 300 degree Celsius. Morning, uncover, add kindling, revives in minutes. Combined with large log or bone base, holds through 12 to 14-hour winter nights. No tending, no waking to frozen hands restarting fire. Forest laws, enclosures, witch hunts criminalized decentralized survival. Churches called folk fire lore pagan, lords enclosed commons, governments centralized energy to control populations. Result: we outsourced warmth to fragile grids. 2021, Texas, 200 plus dead. 2025, 2026 winters, repeated blackouts, soaring bills, 2,000 plus year average U.S. heating. Medieval families, near zero cash cost. Circular systems, coppice, bone recycling, peat smoldering, versus linear modern, cut, buy, burn, repeat. These 7 techniques still work perfectly in 2026. No patents, no subscriptions, just knowledge. We didn't outgrow them. We forgot them on purpose. Which technique will you try first? Comment below. I'm researching medieval masonry heaters, Kacheloven, next. One fire heats a house 24 hours. Suggest another lost skill in comments. If this opened your eyes to real resilience, like, share, subscribe. Knowledge is the ultimate power source. Stay warm out there.